Like I said on the dance floor, you might want to find something to hang on to.
Hey, who turned out the lights? Hey, who turned out the lights?
Hello, sweeties, and welcome to Prepare the Timelash, the Doctor Who podcast that takes a closer look now at the adventures of River Song and her time with the Doctor. I am one of your hosts, Mike Ferguson.
And I am your other host, Ken Hart. Mike, you stole my hello, sweetie. I was going for that one.
Sorry.
You beat me to it. But yes, we are covering the adventures of one River Song and her many travels with various doctors. And we will be starting off with the first story that River appears in, Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. It's a two-parter. But Mike, as we are now getting into a brand new season of Prepare the Timelash, maybe we have new listeners.
Right. So if you really want a full background on us and what we're about and how we got involved with Doctor Who, I will point you back grudgingly to our very first episode where we talk about it. Spoilers, it was literally our first podcast episode ever. I know that's a jumping on point for people, but I've gone back and listened to it and I cringe a little.
Yeah.
We're learning a lot. But suffice to say, I'll speak a little for Ken. We're both very long-time Doctor Who fans, the both of us. We date back to the PBS days prior to the show's reboot under Russell T Davies the first time. And we're very big fans of the show.
Yes, very much so. And we have covered this is our fourth official season, not year. We've been doing this more than 4 years, but it's our fourth official season. First, we covered the Sixth Doctor. Then we covered the adventures of Leela, Warrior of the Seven Team. And most recently, we finished a long season on cosmic beings in Doctor Who, the Guardian, Celestial Toymaker, etc. That was kind of interesting. It had its ups and downs that season, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, that one was kind of a potpourri that allowed us to cover literally from the first Doctor to the 15th Doctor, which was a nice spread on that. This one, we decided to go back, one, to something a little more focused, kind of like our Leela season, and the adventures of River Song certainly was appealing. The other appeal to us, which is why we're doing this, is we've dabbled with what I'll call modern Who from time to time. We have a few bonus episodes. We do Asylum of the Daleks in one of them. We covered The Giggle and some things with the 14th and 15th Doctor. But for the most part, we have been really covering classic Doctor Who. Yep. And this seemed like a great jumping on point to just cover full on and get more into modern Doctor Who than we really have. Although, scarily enough, I mean, modern Doctor Who now is almost 20 years old.
I'm terrified when I think about that, Mike.
Yeah.
How has it been like 20 years?
Yeah, not quite, but we're getting
not quite, but we're getting. Oh my God. I mean, it's just insane. 15 years since Tennant. Well, no, more than 15 years since Tennant started.
Yep.
I mean, it's just crazy. But yeah, we wanted to do River Song. Fascinating character. One thing we had discussed was, do we want to do River's stories in the order in which they were broadcast, or do we try to do it in chronological standpoint from River's view? Say, starting with like the first stories with River as a child. And we thought, that might be a bit too timey-wimey for even our convoluted brains to figure out. So we decided we're going to stick to the broadcast order of River Song stories and try to imagine what was going through our heads as viewers seeing these episodes for the very first time, and then speculate as to Was this planned, these later events? Were they kind of like self-fulfilling prophecies? Almost like the existence of River herself. It, is it kind of a loop where River basically makes herself come into being? Yeah, we can have some fun with this.
Yeah. And I have to say, I was really thinking long and hard about this the other day in preparation for this recording. It's very rare that you get a character in TV with an arc like River Songs from beginning to end. And who knows? Maybe she'll show up with the 15th Doctor and Ncuti Gatwa. So maybe her televised story isn't at an end just yet. But even if it is, it's very rare to see a character with an arc like hers. Her arc is backwards, which is what makes it all the more impressive. And we'll get into that with this story. I think is like a fantastic example of it. It was a brilliantly realized story when it aired.
Yeah.
And now rewatching it, I was dumbfounded. Like, it has even more weight to it.
Yeah.
Now, knowing what you know of going all the way through the husbands of River Song, it's like it hits even harder, which is like insane.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I watched this 2-parter, and then a few days later I rewatched Husbands of River Song. And yeah, the impact on both ends is doubled now that you know the whole story.
Right. There are lines in there when you first air, and we'll get into it when we get the story fully, but there are lines that hit hard, but there's some lines that seem semi-throwaway in the actual original airing. We talked about it like a little before we started recording, where we was like, River's like, oh, let's check out Diaries. Oh, the crash of the Byzantium. Oh, the singing towers at Beryllium. Oh, and they're just like these nonsense phrases.
Yeah.
That later on it's like, oh, this is what they were talking about. And it's a great story. But River seemed like a good companion, or I'm going to call her a companion, even though she travels with the Doctor from time to time. So, I mean, she's kind of like her own unique case.
Yeah.
But she's a fascinating character. We got to see Alex Kingston at Galley 1 this year.
Yep.
She's a fascinating actress. So this seemed like a perfect topic.
And she is as full of personality and charm as River. I mean, just Alex Kingston is not like a standoffish, shy individual.
No.
She is right there having a great time.
Yeah, I will say that for when we met her and when we saw her on the panel, and even like in the experience I had during my photo shoot with her for just like, one of those paid, you get to meet the person for like, whatever it is, 30 seconds and get your photo taken with them. It really struck me as like, oh, this is not like a lot of, I'll call it acting. This is her bringing her full personality and incorporating it into the character of River, rather than, like you said, she's not some shy wallflower who decided I can just bring it when the camera's rolling. No, she's a lot like River in real life.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about River's creation as a character. And of course, I know when we talked about Bernice Summerfield, and when we covered the Triumph of Sutekh recently, we talked about the similarities between Benny and River. But it looks like Benny wasn't at least a conscious inspiration for River, from what I've read about River's creation from Stephen Moffat. That it was more of I don't know, I guess more of an adventurous character, someone who could be the Doctor's equal. And it sounds like, from what I read, Mike, that Silence in the Library had the concept of a team of researchers and an archaeologist. And then from the archaeologist, Moffat then decided, oh, I'm going to put this twist in here.
Yeah. So when we get into Silence of the Library, Forest of the Dead, this comes at the tail end of David Tennant's tenure as the 10th Doctor. This originally was a 2-parter in Series 4. First part aired on May 31st, 2008. The second on June 7th, 2008. What if that might have happened? Originally, this was going to be in Series 3. And at the time, Moffat was working on the concept of the Weeping Angels. So
Oh.
he originally would have had that as his two-parter for series 3. I couldn't really find out what happened, but Russell T Davies decided he wanted the Dalek story, the Daleks of Manhattan thing, to be, or evolution of the Daleks,
Yeah.
to be the two-parter for that. So Moffat got relegated to do one episode, and he can clearly do one episode great because that was Blake.
Yeah.
But he was like, you get to do a two-parter for series 4. So that's this.
Yep.
And Moffat wasn't yet, when people project out, River Song and all this stuff that was going to be developed over time, he wasn't even the producer, showrunner of Doctor Who. It wasn't even known. Like, you told me right before we started, that gets confirmed like during the filming of this.
It was during the creation of these stories, Silence Down Library and Force of the Dead, that Russell T Davies approached him about taking over as the showrunner.
Yeah. I think he was probably like one of the likely, if like on a short list of candidates.
Sure.
But yeah, he hadn't been confirmed on. So it's not like he had some like master arc plan, let alone for River Song for this. Yeah. And I found the creation of the character just in general interesting of River Song, because it's not like he had, I'm going to do an archaeologist and it's going to be someone who knows the Doctor. It's this very meticulous writing process of Moffat's. And I just love, in reading about it, how he thinks through things. Okay. He originally comes up with this idea that the Doctor is going to encounter, as you said, this research team in this secluded library. Mm-hmm. And it comes down to his own personal tastes at point, which I again, find interesting, because he hates the idea that the Doctor and Donna conveniently land at the exact same time as this research team in the library, because he comes to the conclusion that I'm going to have to waste at least 2 or 3 scenes where the entire team does not trust the Doctor and Donna. And we're going to have to do the typical classic Who thing of, they don't trust, he's got to convince them, blah, 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 blah. And we waste, 10 minutes of story just trying to establish that.
And you could do that in Classic Who when you have 4 episodes or 6 episodes. Not in Modern Who. You don't have that leisurely time to come up with the usual, they're suspicious. Who are these newcomers?
Right. So he then goes, well, what if I just made it that the Doctor knows one of the people already? And he hated that idea too, because he's going, 1, boy, that's awfully convenient. And 2, who is that person? Because he was actually going through the modern show going, is there a character I can reuse? Like we could possibly like rehire. That would make sense. And it's like, no, there's no existing character in the RTD era that makes really good sense. So that means that person comes from an untelevised story.
Right.
And it's like, that's kind of cheap. Mm-hmm. So this is where I love Moffat's writing style. Most people at that point would be like, I guess I got to give up on this idea. He goes, well, what if I have a character who knows the Doctor, but the Doctor doesn't know yet? Yeah. It's from the Doctor's future. And from that, the idea of River Song evolves. And even just stuff that they hint at, like it's hinted within this story that River will someday be the Doctor's wife. They never spell it out.
Yeah.
But they do hint at it.
When Lux says you two are, arguing like a old married couple.
And then the look that River gives the Doctor. It just kind of like tips that one off. But again, never explicitly spelled out.
Right.
So you have this whole idea of, even then, it takes River through the story convincing the 10th Doctor why he needs to trust her. Yeah. But they do spend some time on that. But it's far more interesting than the typical classic Who trope of we don't trust you and and you got to prove yourself to us and all this other stuff. Yeah. So the approach I find fascinating. of how
Yeah.
he actually handled that. And from there, it's like, oh, and this character's the archaeologist and has a relationship with the doctor. I think that's when the Benny Summerfield stuff starts
Oh, sure.
creeping in. It's like,
Oh,
oh,
yeah.
it's too good not to mine.
Yeah. And I think also I'm very curious. I was reading about how RTD went about casting the role of River Song. He wanted it to be a fairly well-known person, an actor that the audience would recognize, and it would convey a sort of intellectual shorthand that this character was somebody important. And who was RTD going to get for that, Mike? Who did he want? Who was on his dream list?
This one blew my mind. And in some ways, I'm glad this person didn't get the part because I don't know if you would have had the recurring character of
Oh,
River
God,
Song.
no.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you probably would. Russell T Davies gets the idea. Yes, as you said, this should be a recognizable actor because, like, if even a casual viewer goes, "Oh, hey, that's the person," it's like that person must be an important character. Russell T Davies tried to get Kate Winslet from Titanic and a billion other incredible movies
Yeah.
since then, and was a huge star
Huge.
in 2008. Still is now, but would have been quite the get.
Yeah.
He knew her. There's a television show in, I think it's the late 90s in Great Britain called Dark Season. And that's one of Kate Winslet's first acting jobs. And Russell T Davies was one of the writers on it.
Yeah.
So he had a relationship.
Yeah.
So he did contact her and was like, hey, we have this part. She was apparently really into the idea and would have done it, except couldn't find what the conflict was, but there was a filming conflict. And they're like, the window for our filming is like this 2-week block.
Ah.
And she was like, can't do it. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they do go around and eventually land on Alex Kingston, who was very well known from the American show ER.
Yep.
And Alex said it during the panel we were on, and every interview I've read since then has just confirmed it. She had no idea this was going to be anything but 2 episodes of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like, oh, it's an really interesting part. It's really clever. Sure, I'll do it. But when she originally shows up on set, Tennant loved working with her. Everyone loved working with her.
Yeah.
But they were going, all right, that's it. And there's River Song. So,
Right.
I mean, it's kind of funny that it just, this character who's so well known and has such an incredible arc, again, not planned.
Yeah.
Moffat has said, I went and looked and thought his opinions. He was like, he was hoping, he really liked, especially after he saw it air.
Yeah.
He was like, I hope we can keep going with this character. But even he really had no idea of like what the possibility was going to be.
Oh yeah, who knows what the future is going to hold for like the show? I mean, the show was certainly a big hit at this point, the new Doctor Who, but yeah, nobody quite knew what was going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, so Moffat seeds the story with some, like we talked about the crash of the Byzantium, which we'll be covering next month, but he seeds out like a lot of interesting things, and to me, it strikes me in hindsight very similar to an American showrunner. Now he's more of a movie guy, but J.J. Abrams, with when he does Alias, which was a great show that I loved a lot. I mean, fell apart at the end, much like his other show we're going to talk about, Lost, which great, falls apart at the end. He seeds a lot of ideas. I mean, in Abrams' case, like Alias had like all the Rambaldi devices, which were like every episode had like the Rambaldi device, which you might have called it the MacGuffin device because that's really what they all were.
Yeah.
Lost. What do the numbers? What's under the hatch? What's that? Moffat's doing the same thing with Crash of the Byzantium, Jim the Fish, like all this other stuff. He just kind of like lays out stuff, and some of it pays off incredibly well. We probably talk about a few episodes where some of Moffat's ideas don't pan out.
Right.
He doesn't bat 1,000, but he bats pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think, as we get into some of the later stories, the shine comes off the new car in a way. But certainly early on, I think most of the appearances of River are huge successes.
Yeah.
Creatively, the whole package, writing, acting, production, they're all like crackerjack stories. And I agree. If Kate Winslet had said yes, we wouldn't have gotten, we might have gotten maybe another 1 or 2 appearances.
I think we would have been lucky to get one. Probably would have been a minor miracle. And if we had gotten 2, it just wouldn't have hit the same.
No, it wouldn't. So all Alex Kingston knew was this 2-parter. And it wasn't until I'm not sure if it was the next story, The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone, that Moffat told her who River was, but no one else, the rest of the cast, didn't know until much, much later.
Yes. And this is where, again, he seeds stuff really well. We'll get into this a little more. Because all I will say is Amy Pond's surname was a very deliberate choice.
Yeah.
But it's clever in that he wrote it like that, opening up a possibility to certain things. But if he could never get Alex Kingston back, Amy Pond as a name works just fine.
Sure.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, it's not too on the nose. So
and I was reading one funny thing about the name, that Russell T Davies and Moffat had like a little game they played with each other.
Oh, okay, yes.
Where they would build like story titles that would make a funny acronym together.
Right.
So
usually a little bit rude.
So the acronym for this one was ARSE. Sorry if I'm offending any of our UK listeners. But ARSE, which the story title that Moffat had come up with, nothing to do with this, but it was a story for something else. And it was a river song ending.
Yes.
And RTD says, "What's a river song?" And there was no answer to it, but Moffat thought, you know what, that's a good name. I gotta find a way to name a character that.
Yeah, and that's what I love about some of the behind the scenes stuff on this. A lot of times you look at, especially the way like Moffat's stories, and one of the reasons I'm glad we're doing this season is a lot of his stories, not all, but a lot, fit together like a Swiss watch, where they're just like, they have all these intricate parts, and then as the story unfolds, you're like, I cannot believe how well everything connects and fits. I mean, this story is one of them.
Yeah,
but
and we'll be getting into more when we get the next season's, series 5 with Matt Smith. The way that comes together at the end is mind blowing.
Yeah, but you have him doing this, but a lot of his stuff, you would think it's like all this meticulous planning. Some of it is, but some of it is just like the name River Song. Oh, yeah. I made a rude acronym. I just stumbled across this phrase. What does a river song mean? Oh, that'd be a cool character name. I'm going to use that. Yeah. It's very nice.
Right. Yeah, it is kind of funny the way he does this. And Mike, what else did you want to talk about with the background of River and Moffat and RTD?
Not really that much more. I think it's just important to, again, realize they're setting stuff up. The way Moffat tends to work is he's setting stuff up for potential. I mean, I would love to read like a book of what did he have set up that just never happened. Because I'm sure, I mean, he does lots of little references and lots of things like that. But yeah, there's not much more. The only other thing I think might be going, which is a non-River note. It was almost funny. We're doing this story to cover River Song and her era. And I remembered so many bits of this story, but almost all from the River perspective. I was like, oh, right. This is the Hey, Who Turned Out the Lights episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yes. Yeah. So the villain, quote unquote, in this, which is actually more of just like a force of nature than anything else. It's not really, I mean, as the story unfolded, I was like, oh, it's not actually particularly evil. It's just there.
Yeah.
The Vashta Nerada, which I'm forgetting at the moment what the 10th Doctor says it means. Per Stephen Moffat, it means absolutely nothing. And he just wanted David Tennant to utter a phrase that would sound cool coming out of David Tennant's mouth.
Yeah. And he makes it sound really cool.
Right. So, I mean, that is the level you're dealing with. Sometimes it's this really overly complex stuff, and sometimes it has nothing to do with anything apart from, hey, this would be cool. Let's go with it.
Yeah. So the story, I guess we can start getting into some details. If you take a look at the whole two-parter, Mike, I mean, we kind of hinted at this at the beginning of the recording. This is just a great story. I mean,
Yeah.
I like it more each time I watch it. It's so good. You feel the emotional tension. The Vashta Nerada are kind of terrifying on a level of, I would say, the first Weeping Angels appearance, because you can't stop them. I mean, they're in the darkness, they're in the shadows, and they can kill you in like half a second.
Well, one of the
So,
creepy
yeah.
things is I love this reference, which is clearly like Moffat showing his fanboy roots. One of the, that might be Proper Dave, one of the crew members,
Mhm.
goes, "How do we stop them?" And the doctor looks at him and says, "Daleks, shoot them in the eye stalk. Cybermen, gold. Vashta Nerada, run."
Yeah.
And he's even just going, and you see that throughout the episode,
Yeah.
which is kind of a very different thing for the Doctor, or and particularly the 10th Doctor, to do, where the 10th Doctor, one of his trademarks is he's super clever. He
Yeah.
usually always outwits, outthinks something. At no point does he cobble together a quote unquote solution for the Vashta Nerada.
Yeah.
The second he realizes he's there, he is looking at that whole team of archaeologists and even River. And I think that's why he's getting annoyed with River. It's like, no, you need to go.
Yeah.
We all need to leave. He does want to figure out what happened to the crew that gets quote unquote saved.
Right.
So, I mean, that is a concern of his. It's not like he's just like bailing out, but it is one of the few Doctor adventures you ever see where, like, the second he finds out what the real threat is, his instinct is go,
Yeah.
go. Don't even try to fight. Just
Right.
go.
He knows you can't defeat the Vashta Nerada. You can just hope to survive them.
Right. And as we said, they're a force of nature.
Yeah.
They're not particularly malevolent or evil. There's some creepy moments with them, but they just feed.
Yeah.
That's what they're there. I mean, I actually found one of the chilling lines of it too is when Donna starts talking to the Doctor about the Vashta Nerada, and he tells her they're everywhere in the universe. She goes, "Well, not on Earth." And he's like, "Oh yeah, they're on Earth.
Yeah.
Sometimes random people disappear."
Yeah.
And that's all he says. And oh, that's creepy.
Yeah. Not everyone comes back out of the dark.
Right. Right. And the implication is, which I thought it was a brilliant move on the show of how they explain it. But the implication is the Vashta Nerada usually exist everywhere, but in very small numbers. So yeah, the Vashta Nerada on Earth, they're probably, taking out like a dozen people a year or something, but in quiet, and it's not in mass scale.
Yeah.
Where the implication is the library has so many of them. Anybody who comes on this planet and visits the library is going to die.
Yeah. And before he even mentions the Vashta Nerada and before River Song and the archaeologists show up, we have this whole interesting scene early at the beginning of the story about this young girl who's in a living room talking to a apparent, like therapist, and her dad's there too, talking about when she closes her eyes, she's in the library. And in this fantasy world, suddenly the Doctor and Donna show up. And she's like, well, people are in my library. Nobody's supposed to be in my library. And we get this whole weird thing where somehow there's this odd connection between this little girl and the library. And it takes a while for it to become clear what that connection is.
Yeah, which I'll say that is I don't know if a trope is the right word, but that is something you see in a bunch of Moffat stories where he has two originally seemingly unconnected storylines.
Okay.
That eventually wrap into each other. And this one was, at first, they have this whole thing with the little girl, and then you're realizing, oh, she's seeing the library on her TV. Oh, the Doctor's trying to hack into the mainframe. Her phone rings.
Yeah, yeah.
And then later on, he's like, let me get a visual. And suddenly he's talking through her through the television. So you realize there's a connection between these two very wildly different things.
Yeah.
but he also has the luxury of a two-parter, but just teasing that out.
Yeah.
What the connection actually is and how it's going to resolve itself.
Yeah. The concept of the library itself is great because it's an entire artificial planet that is nothing but the biggest library in the universe. And I love that idea of basically people just come from all over to go to this massive library. I mean, there are whole continents devoted to a genre.
Right.
It's awesome concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like taking the concept of the Library of Alexandria and putting it on like this massive sci-fi scale.
Yes.
The whole repository of knowledge everywhere. But it's not even just knowledge. I mean, there's probably a Stephen King section in the middle of this somewhere, which is probably its own continent at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
What did you think of the 10th Doctor of this one, Mike?
We mentioned earlier on when we did the Satan Pit, Impossible Planet, that I don't really like the 10th Doctor with Rose, whatever.
Right.
I love him with Donna.
Oh, it's so good, Mike. It's just so good
because he's very charming. He's a little pompous and a little vain and arrogant. Donna cuts him down to size. All the time. And she's like the perfect companion.
Yeah.
But we're getting into our whole idea with River. I really like how he plays the whole thing with River and how that all develops because he's very confused and very skeptical.
Okay.
When they first land in the library, he's doing his usual thing with Donna. He's trying to sell it as, hey, we're visiting the library. Isn't this cool? And then comes out, well, weirdly enough, someone summoned me here or asked me to come here. So he's curious about that. River is not who he's expecting. And the fact that River knows him is really screwing with him.
Right.
And he's not liking it at all. And it's like, I find it interesting of how much he resists that. Even though it's kind of like not to go into another of Moffat's shows, it's almost like he's not recognizing the Sherlock Holmes moment of, I'm going to misquote it, but it's just like, eventually you remove everything, and even if it's impossible, it's got to be true.
Right.
The logical conclusion is she knows him very well. Just based on her behavior, just based on everything she's saying, and he's still resisting.
Yeah.
And I just like, he's trying to resolve that along with the fact that she is giving him an immense amount of respect. She's the one, the rest of the crew is like, wait, this guy? Why did you bring him here? And she's the one like flat out telling, you need him.
Yeah.
You need him. This is a very weird situation. You need him. So, I mean, on one hand, he's flattered. I mean, one of the best parts of that is River going, pretty boy, you're with me. And he's just doing his own thing. And eventually, oh, I'm pretty boy. The look that Donna gives him is so good. Yeah.
Well, then she goes, oh, that came out too fast.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And just the whole interaction between Ten and River. Oh, my God. Every scene with them. Yeah, just when she says, oh, look at you. You're so young. And he goes, really, I'm not. Oh, you are. I mean, it comes down to the eyes. I mean, his eyes are so young compared to the Doctor that she comes to know and love.
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the things I really like with Ten and River interacting as well as Moffat lets this play out.
Yeah.
This non-trust. And then there just hits this moment where he just speeds things along. And that's when she whispers the Doctor's actual name into his ear.
Yeah.
And basically she goes, look, I don't have time to win over your trust. You're going to have to accept who I am. And this is how I know how to do it. And then I just love, it's this look of wonder and horror in his eyes. And all she says is, are we good?
And he can't talk for a second.
Right. And she has to repeat the question. And at that point, he's like, yeah, we're good. And it's just this very sobering moment.
Oh, yeah. Because at that point, we don't know, the audience, we don't know what she whispered to him. But whatever it was, you can tell it shook him to his core.
Right.
That how would she know this? Right.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I do like is like the evolution, which comes with, I mean, this truncated version of their relationship over 2 episodes. he sees her sonic screwdriver, and he's
Right.
like, where did you get it? You gave it to me. And even when he's like fiddling around with some of the terminals within the library, he's using his.
Yeah.
And like, there's some funny, use the dampers on the Sonic.
Yeah.
I don't have dampers. And she hands him hers. And she's like, mine does.
Yeah, she goes, it will one day.
Right. And there's just like little things like that. But the full circle on that is spoilers at the end when she gets sucked into the core to save everyone, literally save everyone. He's just looking at it going, why would I give you a Sonic? And again, spoilers for Husbands of River's song, it's presented as a gift.
Yes.
No more than that. And she's using it like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's the 12th Doctor being clever, knowing I know how to really save you.
Yeah.
I'm going to build this thing into your Sonic that's going to let the 10th Doctor save you.
Right. That's what the 10 says when he says, why would I give her my screwdriver? You know, I've had years to think about this. Why would I do it? And you know, that's when he realizes that he has saved her, literally saved her
consciousness.
Her brain print, her consciousness to the memory cell on the screwdriver. It's great. Just great.
Yeah, absolutely wonderful. We talked a little bit about Donna in this one.
Yes.
What did you think of Donna here?
Oh, this is a tremendous Donna episode. I mean, we get to see the whole bit with her where right from the beginning, when the Doctor and Donna, shortly after they arrive, they're being chased by the darkness. They don't know it's the Vashta Nerada yet. They're being chased by this field of darkness that they know is bad because they heard that recording saying, stay out of the shadows. My God, stay out of the shadows. And the Doctor's trying to open the study door with the Sonic and it's not working. And he goes, well, it doesn't work on wood. And she goes, it doesn't do wood. And she goes, get back. And she just kicks the doors open.
Yeah.
I love Donna. She's great. But we see all sides of her. We see her being like very sympathetic or really empathetic to Miss Evangelista.
Oh, yeah.
Lux's secretary, who's basically no one thinks has a brain in her head. And then she's also being very feisty. But then I love when River hears her name and goes, Donna, you're Donna Noble. And she goes, yeah. And Donna says something, well, what happens to me in the future? You haven't seen me. So what happens to me in the future? And then there's a distraction. And River blessedly is able to avoid that awkward conversation.
Yeah, that's actually one section of it. I know famously, one of the reasons RTD loved working with Stephen Moffat is RTD famously or infamously rewrote a lot of other people's stuff.
Yes.
He was like a Terrence Dix. Always gave the original author credit, but I mean, there's apparently a lot of stories that almost are rewritten from page one up by Russell T Davies. Stephen Moffat is the one person he said, I barely had to touch anything ever on his story, which is one reason he gets. I'm wondering if that was a note.
Oh, I'm sure.
Just like a foreshadow of, yeah, Donna, not going to reach a good end, at least not under the first RTD era.
Oh, yeah, they were seeding lots of stuff about Donna throughout her season. I mean, the Dr. Donna in the Fires of Pompeii.
The oracles.
One of the daughter who's an oracle in training says there's something on your back.
Yeah.
So they did a lot of that with Donna, kind of hinting that, there's some dark times coming for Donna.
Yeah, I like that they just hint at it without really getting into it.
Yes. Overall, it's just a great story with Donna. In the second part, it has its ups and downs, Donna's role in the second part. I mean, it's a vital part because we get to see once Donna has been saved into the core and is put into this virtual reality, she has this whole other life now.
Yeah.
She's married with kids who just pop up out of nowhere. And she has this relatively happy life. And she has a husband who adores her. And then when things start going kerflooey with the computer towards the end, and the whole world starts falling apart, even though at that point Donna knows that things aren't real.
Right.
It still feels real to her.
Right. She finds Miss Evangelista in there, or a corrupted version of Miss Evangelista, all of this is absolutely necessary to the story.
Right.
You need to see what the virtual reality world looks like.
Right.
And you need to see why it's falling apart and how it works. It's important to the story. And I didn't really love the execution of it, but you can't stick any of the other crew members in there because we don't care.
Right.
And we need the Doctor and River together in the actual library. So logically, who else is it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we need the Doctor and River in the second part quite a bit. So rather than sideline Donna, Moffat makes her storyline quite vivid. And even in this other reality, we get classic Donna when the intelligent Miss Evangelista in the VR reality convinces Donna that it's all fake, nothing's real. And Donna goes, "I've been dieting."
Yes.
It's like,
her priorities at times are just like
just awesome. Just great. Donna's awesome. I mean, I love most of this season. Yeah, it's just very enjoyable. And at the end, I was just going to say at the end, too, she has his husband, but she isn't sure if her husband was real or not. Was he a creation of the virtual reality, or was he a real person? And she just misses seeing him again.
Yeah, he was apparently one of the original people, the 4,000 whatever people who get saved 100 years before to be saved from the Vashta Nerada.
Yeah.
So he's been in the whole data core the whole time. Yeah. So he was a real person. And it's so sad because he has a stammer.
Oh, yeah.
So he sees her and he's calling out to her when she and the Doctor are leaving.
Yeah.
But he can't get her name out.
Yeah, his mouth basically gets stuck in the stammer. And he gets teleported away before he can actually yell out her name, which is sad.
Yeah.
Very sad.
There's also the very last scene in this, which is a very Donna scene to me. And it would so hit home for me with the giggle. There's the Doctor and Donna standing around at the end. And after they think River is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And she goes, "Doctor, how are you?" And he just goes, "I'm fine." And her response to that is, "So when Time Lords say they're fine, does that mean they're not fine?" And
he goes, "Why?" And she goes, "Because I'm fine too."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, and it just goes to that whole thing of the Doctor never stops.
Oh, yeah. You're right. That is actually very reminiscent of what we hear later on towards the end of the giggle, that conversation in the TARDIS with
14 and 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Donna's there. It's just like, you just keep running. You just move on to the next thing and you're never stopping. And like, I'm not sure it would have hit the same way, but having seen that recently, I was like, oh, yeah. Even then, this is kind of RTD's thoughts anyway.
I also want to say, I just love talking about the ending. I just love the scene right after that where the Doctor's walking back towards the TARDIS. And after River had said earlier that the Doctor just snaps his fingers and opens the door of the TARDIS and walks in. And he goes, "The TARDIS doesn't respond to me snapping my fingers." And so he does it because now he knows that pretty much what River said was true. And he just holds it. And he's tentative. He holds his hand out and snaps his fingers, and the TARDIS responds. And it's like such a good moment.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes. So many good moments.
Yeah.
So let's get into River in this and her first appearance. I mean, one of the things I found amazing on the rewatch is how fully fleshed out River is.
Yes.
It's like, oh, this River? I mean, yes, Alex Kingston is older, but this is the same River you see in Husbands of River Song.
Yeah.
A lot of TV characters, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this, but like first appearance, they're figuring it out, or the character evolves.
Yeah.
I'll go back to one of my favorite shows of all time, Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Okay.
Spike, season 1 or season 2, I forget which one he first pops up in. I think maybe season
2.
Maybe season 2. But that Spike is so far away from the Spike that eventually you see towards the end of that show and in the show Angel.
Yeah.
There's an evolution. It's like, and you can kind of see, this is what we thought the character would be. We're figuring this out. River is one of these rare occasions where it's like, no, she's firing on all cylinders from the get-go.
Yeah, we are seeing River pretty much at the end of her arc.
Right. And it's consistent with what you would expect from River at the end of the arc, despite the fact that technically this is the first time we're seeing.
Yeah.
And she's sassy in this. I mean, she's flirting around. Like, she makes Proper Dave, one of the crew members, put on the helmet at one point. And he's like, why do I have to wear the helmet? I don't fancy you. She just has like...
Oh, no, she did that to Lux. She told Lux to put the helmet on because he's being such a bore, such an annoying little wiener in the first part.
Right. She just has the quips. She's very feisty. But I mean, one of the things that struck me too was just her unwavering confidence in the Doctor.
Yeah.
From the beginning. I mean, she's like, no, I brought you an expert. This is him. He will help you. He knows more than anybody.
Yeah.
And then we get to the very end. That actually brought tears to me. The Doctor's like, oh, I know how I'm going to solve this whole problem. I'm going to do this. I'm going to upload myself to the data core and I can fix everything. And she's like, but you'll die.
Yeah.
And that's when she's like, well, yeah, but I mean, he's just being his heroic. So she knocks him out.
Oh, yeah. Because she does not want him ruining their future together. As she says, when the Doctor kind of recovers.
The whole thing with that I thought was hilarious at the very beginning is she handcuffs him.
Yeah, and he goes, handcuffs? Where'd you get handcuffs?
And then she just does that smirk and goes, spoilers. Like, it's so funny. But then it just veers from that kind of the playful quip to he's telling her, no, it's okay. Let me do it. Time can be rewritten. And that's when she looks at him and goes, you are not rewriting 1 second.
Don't
my
you
memory.
dare. Don't you dare.
If you die here, it'll mean I've never met you. Time can be rewritten. Not those times. Not one line. Don't you dare. It's okay. It's okay. It's not over for you. You'll see me again. You've got all of that to come. You and me. Time and space. You watch us run.
Yeah, that's where she's going, no, I have to do this because effectively what she's telling me is you don't know it yet because you haven't lived it yet.
Yeah.
I have lived this amazing life with you.
Yeah.
I mean, and quite honestly, the things he doesn't know yet, as your wife, and especially when I was thinking of it, watching it this time, and the last time I saw you, I spent 24 years with you on Beryllium.
Oh, yeah, all she says in this story is, what a night that was.
Yeah, because technically it's true. It's one night.
Yeah.
It's 24 years. But she realized she has this wonderful life with the Doctor. And he doesn't understand that if he tinkers around with the timeline, he's going to screw that up for her.
Oh, yeah.
And that's how important it is to her.
Yeah.
So that's why she goes into the data core to fix everything. Story-wise, I thought this was pretty clever. The data core is the embodiment or the consciousness of the little girl you see at the beginning with the television screens and stuff. She was a girl who had a terminal illness. So rather than letting her just die, her family, who were building the library, uploaded her consciousness up into the library's data, basically to run it.
Right.
And the thing I thought was neat is Dr. Moon, who's her like therapist, psychologist, whatever, is the antivirus security.
Yeah.
Like checking up on her health.
Yeah, literally is a moon, an artificial moon around this artificial planet.
Right.
Yes.
And one of the reasons the data core is breaking down is she saved, literally, they make a good wordplay thing of, they originally go, oh, well, the crew is safe, but we just don't know where they are.
Right.
She saved all of their consciousness and all of their forms up with her.
Right.
But she can't handle that.
Right. It's the largest hard drive in the universe. And even so, it still can handle all the information it has, plus these thousands of living beings.
Right.
You know, these consciousnesses that are now in the computer is pretty much driving the computer. Cal, which we find is short for Charlotte Abigail Lux, is driving Cal insane.
Right.
For a computer.
So that's why the Doctor originally wanted to upload himself, and why River does. It's like, I figured out how I can fix that, and get everybody else out, but somebody's got to go in and do that. So that's
Yeah.
why River pretty much sacrifices herself to do it. I mean, and
Right.
technically, there's another story where it features her consciousness within there, but that's what River accepts that as her fate.
Yes. Oh, yeah, because she knows the doctor is correct that you need like another living brain to connect and sort everything out, but she cannot let it be the doctor because all of their future together will be ruined.
Right.
And we know from like later stories that it doesn't matter that all the other lives that the doctor could save will end up not being saved. It's
Right.
River's like, no, you do not touch our life together.
Right.
That has to happen. So yeah, it's great. Oh, but you know what? Also, another thing too, with we're talking about Lux, who in the first half is kind of like, oh, like I said, a weenie. He is this corporate guy who is just concerned about the profit and his company. But then we find out at the end that he has a surprisingly emotional and almost noble motive behind all this. That, yeah, Cal, Charlotte Abigail Lux, was his, I don't know, his great aunt or something.
Yeah. At this point, the library had been around for 100 years, so it's a distant relative. I think it's a great aunt. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant. They do the stereotypical corporate jerk.
Yes.
And you're like, oh, yeah, here we go. You might as well be part of like Wayland Yutani, like from Aliens franchise. But no, he actually has a really sincere reason
Yeah.
to be here. He is human. He does care. It just doesn't come across very well.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things is at the beginning is him having Miss Evangelista hand in the NDA agreements
Oh yeah. Right. Right.
to Donna and the doctor. Sign here if you want to be part of our crew, and they just look at it and rip them up, and
Yeah.
they're like,
Oh sure. Simultaneously, I love that too.
yeah.
Yeah, it's good stuff. Just good stuff. And what about the other crew members, Mike?
I mean, most of them are fairly generic. I'll sing the praises of Moffat in this particular story. He does a good job of giving them just enough beats to be a little fleshed out and you can sympathize with them.
Yeah.
One thing I found that doesn't make them sympathetic, but I thought made them human was you have Miss Evangelista like standing around going, "Can I help? Can I help? Can I help?" And they're like, "Nope, got it. Please go away." And you realize they're treating her like crap because they think she's stupid. And to be fair, the story they give of she confused the escape pod with the lavatory twice.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. You get the sense, okay, she doesn't have a lot of common sense.
Yeah.
She's probably the best realized one because Donna is the perfect person to talk to her because Donna has a lot of the same insecurities, you know.
Oh, sure.
I'm just a temp from Chiswick. It's like was always her thing. I'm just a temp. I can type 100 words a minute.
Right.
There are constant times throughout her tenure on the show where Donna's just putting herself down. And you kind of see her gravitating towards Miss Evangelista because she sees some similarity.
Yeah.
I felt so sad. She's like, yeah, I'm not very. She's self-aware.
Yeah.
So it doesn't put the rest of the crew in a great light, but it does add a dimension to them where it's like, no, this is exactly what a crew would do. You would have little quirks and like things that irritate you about people. And I have to say, having gone to college when I was in a dorm on a floor where there were 6 mics, there were 6 of us. The whole proper Dave, other Dave thing.
Oh my God.
It's completely believable to me.
That's
because
funny.
Everyone called me Fergie. Because that predates the Black Eyed Peas, by the way.
Oh my God.
But yeah, everyone called me that because if you said Mike, literally 6 people turned their heads.
Yeah.
So one guy looked exactly like Woody on Cheers. So we called him Woody.
Oh my God.
There's another guy we called Marley, and I don't remember why. We all just wound up with different names just because there's like no one else could be bothered to like deal with that. So it was a little touch I find proper Dave, other Dave. Yep,
yeah.
Totally believe it.
Oh, I liked also Anita.
Oh, yeah.
She's really good. She loses her shadow. And so the doctor is trying to protect her, like covering up the viewplate of her spacesuit that might fool the Vashta Nerada into thinking they're already in there. But she's very nervous, but she hangs in there. And then when the doctor realizes that the Vashta Nerada have eaten her, we get to see like classic 10th Doctor rage. That boiling inner anger because now he's mad that Anita is dead. Anita, who was so brave in a situation where it was quite easy to be terrified. And as he says, and you ate her. And he's mad at the Vashta Nerada. And so when the Vashta Nerada try to threaten to eat him, he says, you're in the largest library in the universe. Look me up. It's a good scene.
Yeah. Speaking of the Vashta Nerada, there's two things about them where I thought, like, again, added like just extra levels of awesomeness to this story. First of all, the Doctor states, yeah, there's the Vashta Nerada on Earth and on all these other planets, but they exist in all these really tiny forms. What happened here? How come there's so many? All they keep telling him is, we lived in the forest.
Yes.
We lived in the forest. And you just see this dawning horror on his face at a certain point where he's like, there are billions of books on here. Where did they get the wood to pulp into the paper? Oh my God, they're in all the books.
Right.
Which is just so creepy and so great.
Yeah.
Just how they do that. And then the other one is, I mean, they do some neat stuff where he's like throwing, like, I don't know, like the the Buffalo Wild Wings into the darkness, which just get like, it just turn into bone. But I think it's more of a practicality. At a certain point, it's not that scary. So they come up with that whole brilliant thing of they're wearing the spacesuits and we're going to try and seal ourselves in the spacesuits.
Right.
To avoid the Vashta Nerada. It doesn't work. So you just see a skull.
Oh, yeah.
In this lumbering spacesuit. And I thought that was a great physical realization of a threat for something that's otherwise, it's literally a shadow. I mean, at a certain point, there's only so many ways you can shoot that to make that scary.
Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, one thing I love when, you know, Moffat does this, Stephen King does this a lot, taking something that you see every day and making it scary. Like shadows, you know, statues in the park, you know, Wi-Fi, things like that. It's a great concept.
Yeah, well, the Vashta Nerada in particular, I find almost one of his best concepts.
Yeah.
In that, everyone's a little bit scared of the dark sometimes. You're in a creepy place and it's not well lit. It can be unnerving.
Yeah.
I like that he just takes that and goes, oh, and here's the reason why you are. It's because some of these shadows can do nasty things to you.
Yeah, Donna says, are they in every shadow? No, but any shadow.
Right. Some of his phrases in that, I'm like, Doctor, not helping.
Not helping. No, not helping.
If I were him, I almost would have preferred visually, in a sense, if she had been like, are they in every shadow? No. And then he turns his head and like rolls his eyes or something like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you the truth right now because nobody needs to hear it.
Yeah, it's interesting too. They've never returned in any TV story.
Nope.
And I can imagine it would be hard to do it again because we know, you know, as the Doctor said, you can't defeat them. You can't beat darkness.
Right.
And of course, as you said at the beginning, they're kind of this force of nature. It's like saying we're going to beat an earthquake.
Right.
So to do another story, another TV story with the Vashta Nerada, I would think that would be a challenge to do it visually, to do it again in such a way that it would match the impact that they have in this story. I know Big Finish has done a couple of stories with the Vashta Nerada, which I haven't listened to, but I think visually, it would be hard to do without looking quite repetitive.
Yeah, and the other thing I thought of for this is how would you quite do it without the spacesuit was a great physical representation. What are you going to do? Repeat that?
Exactly.
I mean, that's a little contrived. I'm sure there is a way to do it, but even still, like, I don't think they could ever be like the Weeping Angels with repetitive appearances.
The only thing I could think of would be a story that involves a kind of like the ticking clock device where you have a bunch of people in an area that has become infested with the Vashta Nerada and the Doctor has like only like so much time to get everybody off before they eat everybody.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it would be hard to do, but not impossible. I mean, there are some brilliant writers out there who can probably come up with a great concept for them. So anything else you want to say about this awesome two-parter, Mike?
No, apart from it's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
I'm still in awe that somehow there were 2 episodes of television that were produced that were really great to begin with, and then just have the bonus of all these added layers in retrospect.
Yeah.
I cannot think of anything else quite like so.
Yeah, there aren't that many stories. I mean, there are movies and shows that I've seen, and then when I see them again, I appreciate more of like the fine art that went into that show. But from an emotional standpoint, to have a story hit me even harder on like the second or third viewing is pretty rare.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, Mike, what are we going to be covering next month?
Next month, we say goodbye to David Tennant as the 10th Doctor and say a hello to Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor, as we will cover The Time of Angels and Flesh and Stone, which will cover the aforementioned crash of the Byzantium.
Yay!
And also have The Weeping Angels.
Yes. So, Mike, for the sake of new listeners and even our continuing listeners, how may people contact you on the interwebs?
On the interwebs, if you want to provide feedback from the show, ask any questions, what have you, you can contact me. I am on both Threads and Instagram at Mike Ferguson 5150. You can also contact me via what seems like the old-fashioned email system at mike.ferguson1@gmail.com. I also maintain our Twitter account. Yes, it's Twitter, damn it. I don't care. And that's at Prepare the Pod. Ken, how about yourself?
Yes, I maintain our Instagram presence at Prepare the Pod, and you can find me on both Instagram and Threads as Ken Hart Writer, and you can also find me via the old schooly conveyance of email at kenhartwriter@gmail.com. And as always, you can download new episodes and old episodes. Please dive into our old episodes, new listeners, at preparethetimeless.com, available online and through your favorite podcatcher of choice.
Yeah. And I will say, we used to do, for new listeners, this little feature on the show called What Would Moffat Do? When we covered the classic stories, it would be, what would Moffat do? As in, what would be a more modern take on this story? Literally every episode this particular season is being written by Stephen Moffat.
Right.
So we're not doing that feature anymore, at least for this particular season. If you have suggestions for other possibilities, reach out to us. We'd love to do a feature. Yeah. I mean, I confess, I just couldn't think of a good one. So,
how about what would Eric Sayward do?
Everyone dies horribly, and the doctor doesn't show up for 40 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah. God bless Eric Sayward, our perpetual punching bag.
Yes. All right. Well, folks, until next time, I have been Ken.
I've been Mike.
And we see you next month at Prepare the Timelash.
So long.
Bye.
Pretty boy, with me, I said.
Oh, I'm Pretty Boy.
Yes. Oh, that came out a bit quick.
Pretty?
Would you like a drink? Alder Brown brandy. Help yourself. Don't tell Dad.
The theme music for Prepare the Timelash is provided courtesy of Soundsmith Productions. If you like this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe to Prepare the Timelash on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, or any of your favorite RSS feeds or podcatchers. And if you really like this podcast, please leave us a review at one of those locations. For more information about Prepare the Timelash, check out our website at preparethetimelash.com. To get in touch with us or receive updates and notifications about future episodes, follow us on Twitter at PrepareThePod. Thanks for listening.